This is going to be a short tutorial as to how to make wine from grape juice. First, we start off with 100% grape juice. Don't be fooled by bottles that say 100% California grapes or 100% vitamin C. It has to be 100% grape juice with no preservatives. The front of the bottle may say with added ingredients. The table of contents states that the added ingredient is ascorbic acid, which is just vitamin C, so that's okay. We're going to use a variety of additives, beginning with the yeast. You'll notice that this is not regular bread yeast. Bread yeast handles the alcohol content of about 7 or 8%. The EC1118 yeast can handle up to 18%. So you'll get your alcohol quantity in your wine. Also, we will be using a pectic enzyme, which is going to be used to break down the pectin gelatin, which retains flavor and color. When you break that down with the pectic enzyme, it releases the grape's color and flavor into your wine. We'll also be adding a wine tannin. It's a brown powder that contributes to the dry mouthfeel that wine usually has. Grape juice, well, the grapes that made this grape juice did have tannin in the seeds in the skin, but since this isn't wine, there is no tannin in it, so I add my own. And finally, diammonium phosphate is a yeast nutrient. Converting the sugar that we're going to put in this into alcohol is yeast's job. It's not what it eats. You have to feed the yeast. First, I'm going to pour both bottles, each bottle a half a gallon, into this pot just to raise the temperature up a little bit to about 95 degrees to help melt the sugar. The measurement of sugar is very simple. For one 64-ounce bottle of juice, it's 1 cup, that is 8 ounces, of regular table sugar. Using a hydrometer, you can see that 1.090, well, a little bit more, is the specific gravity. Turn it around, you can see that that shows about 12% alcohol, but a little bit more. This next step is pretty important, surprisingly so. It's a half a cup of water at 102 degrees, and this is to start the yeast. From 104 to 109 are acceptable temperatures. Just under that, at 102, it's close enough. To the water, before we put the yeast in, we're going to add about a teaspoon of sugar, and we're going to add 3 teaspoons of the juice. We'll give that a stir to dissolve the sugar. The water is 102 degrees, so the sugar will dissolve pretty quickly. And then we will add the yeast. Now, there's a billion videos on YouTube about how to do this. Most of them do say, add it evenly over the top. Some prefer to just leave it untouched. The yeast will begin to fall. As you can see, it's dropping out normally. And there are others that say, on even professional winemaking sites, that you should give it a stir. This is my 20th batch of successful wine, so I'm giving a stir. Get all the yeast cells wet, and then we leave it alone for 15 minutes. While we're waiting for the yeast, we add our pectic enzyme, 1/2 teaspoon per gallon of wine, and 1 full teaspoon of the yeast nutrient, the diammonium phosphate. We add the tannin. It's supposed to be 1/4 teaspoon per gallon, but my previous batches, you don't even feel it. You don't even taste its presence. So I'm going to up that, and you can up it according to taste. I tried a half a teaspoon and that didn't work. So now we're going a full teaspoon of tannin per gallon of wine. That astringency is from the tannin in the seeds and the skins of the grapes. But grape juice doesn't have sins and skeeds. No, grape juice has no sins and skeeds, so there's no tannin in there. So I like to add it so that my wine doesn't just look, smell, and taste like wine, but it feels like wine in your mouth, but not necessary. This 1 gallon fermenter is actually 1.25 gallons. Outfitted with an airlock. It's just a water bottle. It is a narrow, rectangular, space-saving water bottle. With a container like this, it maintains the same fermentation temperature. That timer that you heard just go off was for the yeast. It's been 15 minutes, and you can see it's got a nice frothy foamy head on there. The yeast is very alive, awake, alert, and active. Definitely do activate and wake up. Rehydrate your yeast before pitching it into the wine. And the wine is at a warm temperature so we don't temperature shock it. And the reason we used a little bit of juice in the yeast is also so that the yeast could acclimate to the acids and the pH level of the juice that it's going into, so that you don't culture shock it. Now we're going to transfer it to the fermenter. Use a siphon hose. Make sure that the end of the hose is all the way down to the bottom so that you don't splash and beat oxygen into your wine. Allow that to siphon in. The container is full now, and I've fit it with an airlock. Since an airlock's function is to allow the carbon dioxide to push through, and this side is full of a fluid, either water, some of your juice, or another fluid, the carbon dioxide will bubble up through the fluid and escape. But since there's fluid level in there, oxygen can't make its way back into your container. That's it for the fermenter for a few days. Now, because you used EC 1118 yeast instead of bread yeast, you won't have a 2-week fermentation. The airlock will be bubbling away in about 24 hours, and the yeast will metabolize all of the sugar to the point where there's barely anything left in just 3 days. The heater, now I have a space heater in here that is set to the temperature to keep this room keep the fermentation temperature at 88 degrees. I know that a lot of tubers that make their own wine, they prefer 75 to 85 degrees, but 88 works great. 4 hours, and our wine is well on its way. You can see that the airlock is providing its function. The carbon dioxide from the right chamber is pushing under into the left chamber up through the fluid. It reads 88 degrees, 88 and some change. That's exactly what we want. Since I did mention that this was my 20th batch, I've learned a good deal of things. Yeast is 3 to 4 microns in size. This is a filter sock that I got on eBay for $5. The pore size through this fabric is only 1 micron. So when I pull the yeast, the wine through the siphoning tube from the primary fermenter, the square one, I'm going to put the other end of the tube inside this sock and let it drain into the bucket, and this will catch all of the yeast. If you want to look at this on eBay, it's actually called a 1 micron biodiesel filter sock. It's used for cooking oil and even other chemicals. This is a steel ring. It holds its shape, can't be bent. and very thick singed polyester. $5, you can use it over and over. It'll catch all of the yeast so that it doesn't go into your secondary. That's 24 hours. The airlock is going away. This is the end of the third day. As you can see, the foam on the head is almost completely gone. I'm going to get some. The bubbles are minuscule, barely noticeable, and the airlock is basically stopped. The process has completed. The fermentation is done. I've taken the airlock out and I've put the siphon tube, and it's going to go into the 1 micron filter sock. And the wine's going to pass through the sock and into the bucket, and all of the yeast will be kept inside the sock. The wine red filter then rinses out as easily as that. We have a deep red wine that has 12% alcohol, too much carbon dioxide produced by the fermentation process. So now I'm going to stabilize it with potassium metabisulfite. Adding sulfites is fairly simple. You have your Campden tablets, which are potassium metabisulfite. 1 tablet per gallon of wine into a pill crusher. Add the 1 crushed Campden tablet into your wine and give it a good stir. The potassium metabisulfite will keep a specific strain of bacteria from turning the alcohol into vinegar. Time to degas the wine. That is to relieve it of its carbon dioxide. You can do it with a drill and a degas end on it, which if you don't have a brew shop near you and you can't just get something like that, then you can get a straight wooden dowel like this and put zip ties in opposing directions, and then put the dowel in the drill, and this will spin. But I have noticed that this tends to directionalize also. So what we're going to use is a very large baker's whisk. When this turns, the metal bars rip through the wine, causing a far greater agitation in a back and forth motion. Many YouTubers say that with a drill it takes about 15 to 30 minutes. I get a nice rich head of releasing carbon dioxide in just 30 seconds, and it's completely done in about 3 minutes using this method. You may be thinking also that agitating the top will beat oxygen into the wine and it will oxidize. Well, it won't, because as you beat the carbon dioxide out of the wine, this whole compartment fills with carbon dioxide because it's heavier than air. So there is no air touching the surface of the wine. It's carbon dioxide, probably about that much. The carbon dioxide protects the surface of the wine. Believe that all of the carbon dioxide is out, you can test it with a small taste test with the straw. Clean out the fermenting container and transfer it by siphon tube from the bucket back into the same siphon, with the siphon hose, into the same container. Make sure that the hose is all the way to the bottom so you don't splash oxygen into your mix. This is bentonite clay. It's our finding agent. This is what we're going to use to clear it. 2 teaspoons in a dedicated container. Use dip or butter tubs. Don't use something that you're going to want to wash out and eat cereal out of or put cat food in. And then pour in, well, I don't know, 2/3 cup of hot water. And let it sit. Don't stir it up right away. Let it absorb the water. Once it's had time to sit and soak up the heat for about 35 minutes or so, give it a stir until it's just a yucky, mucky, fluid mess. And it's okay if some of it didn't get dissolved. And then pour it into your wine. The square water container comes with not really a cap, but a lock spout. Once you mix the bentonite in there, it creates an initial pressure. Just burp the pressure and make sure this is screwed on tight. Then the bentonite inside will swell and encapsulate all of the wine. Now that the bentonite is being absorbed, it's going to look like that. It's really very interesting. And within just 3 minutes, you notice a clearing already, where that is clearer than below. Now every hour, we're going to shake and resuspend. Now at the 10-minute mark, it's cleared, almost clear, to almost the halfway point. You can see when I put the light behind it, even though you can definitely see that there is a light, it's still not clear because there are 6 bulbs, and when you can identify each of the 6 bulbs through the fluid, then it's clear enough. Okay, I've resuspended. I've just tipped it one way gently and tipped it the other to return it to its spongy reabsorption. And it's only been 40 seconds, and you can see it's already beginning to settle out and clear. Okay, that's the second settling. So let's check in on the clarity with the flashlight. I can see the flashlight very well now, and I can see the light. I can't quite make out as clearly that there are 6 of them, but yes, it's a lot brighter than before. So each time that we mix this back into the mix, it will gather more of the sediment and pull it down to the bottom, making it clearer and clearer each time. Now that's the third settling, and we check it with the light. We're getting a lot of light, and we're able to count that there are 5 lights now in the flashlight. Yeah, it's quite clearing up nicely. We can definitely see there are, well, there's more than 5 LEDs. I guess there's 9. And it's quite clear, but you can also see that there is still some sediment in there. So now to finish it off, we put this in the refrigerator, which helps a lot. And that will clear it overnight, and by morning it'll be crystal clear. Now it's clear. You can see there are 9 lights. I said 5, I said 6, there's 9. It is now completely settled out, and it is ready to be put in the bottle for aging. A cleaned, sanitized 1-gallon container with a screw top lid is the perfect vessel. So I've got my siphon tube siphoning it. You never pour from this because there's a thick sediment on the bottom you don't want to disturb. It's cleaner and clearer if you take it off the top. You see, you'll always have, because you don't want to get close to that sediment, so you always have a little bit of waste. I guess there's probably about a half a cup there. The container is full but not quite. So I'm going to top off as close as I can to the lid with either juice or some wine from an earlier batch. You want as little air in here as possible for the aging process. Now on the floor, in a cool, dark closet, and also in a bag just in case any of these containers leak. It is the one in the back. It is labeled and ready to wait. So I've got 6 gallons here ready to go. Leave your wine in a 1-gallon bottle in the dark for 2 or 3 weeks and you'll have a drinkable product. If you do it this way. There are many ways to do it. Thanks for watching.